You're listening to the Road to Wisdom podcast, weaving stories told by wonderful minds about all things motherhood, health, intimacy, politics, nature, and everything in between.
Join us on an adventure discovering unique experiences that we can learn from to enhance the ways in which we live.
We are your hosts, Chloe
and Keshia.
Well, welcome to the Road to Wisdom podcast, Lauren Dufey. It's been a long time coming. We've been trying to tee up this chat for, literally a year now. And the stars have aligned and you're here. Well, we're all kind of everywhere at the moment, actually. But we've managed to make this work, which is amazing considering we have 12 kids between us and super busy husbands. So what a miracle. But it's going to be a good little chat. I think juicy little chat today. We've kind of been watching you go on this journey over the past, I guess over a year or whatever it's been about, just some big things happening in your world and, marriage dynamics and the crumbling and the putting back together and the crumbling and the putting back together. And I personally have just been so fascinated from afar. So we're like, let's get you on here and talk about all these things because I feel like so many people can relate and it's worthy. And sometimes sharing these stories and just kind of where other women are at is so valuable. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. So where should we start? I kind of just thought maybe we would just share about your life, who's your family, and kind of just introduce yourself to us.
Yeah, great. So I have 4 daughters and I think Chloe, you and I have bonded over the years in our similarities with our growing families and being all over the world and doing things very differently and sort of, just doing it our own way. And we've shared a lot of similar values and beliefs. And, so Chris and I got married when we were 24 and I'd always been told I'll never have children, and from a teenager, you'll never have children. And so,
oh my gosh,
can we pick that apart?
So when I was 16, I had a whole host of reproductive, basically infections and just stuff happening, and it basically ate away at my reproductive system, and so the conversations that Chris and I had about kids was basically I can't have them. Are you okay with that? And he was like, well, we'll deal with that when, down the track. We'll deal with it and it'll be fine. And that was it. That was the extent of our conversation about kids. And then we'd been married for about 6 months and I was really ill and I ended up in the hospital and getting all these tests, and I just kept having this vision of this baby and seeing all these little funny signs there was a dummy left on our doorstep and a baby bottle on my car bonnet and just weird things like that. And I was like, there's a baby. And anyway, there was. So I was pregnant and I remember finding out and I was just so shocked, terrified, shocked. And I was not overly maternal. I'd never spent really any time around kids or babies or anything. And I remember driving home being like, what is Chris going to say? This is so not the plan. We had the perfect white picket life, we called it. It was very easy. We were building our businesses, new home, just married. It was all perfect. And baby just wasn't in that picture. And then anyway, I told him, we took a few days to get into it, I'd say, and be good, be good about it and feel really good about it. And then he was doing a call with a colleague of his who was based in Dubai. And anyway, he just calls out from the office one day, hey, Loz, do you want to move to Dubai? And I was like, sure. And I don't know why I said sure. I don't know why I didn't say no, we're just having our first baby and why would we move to the other side
I
of the
can
world?
seriously relate to this.
And from that, like, sure, it was like this thing that just snowballed so fast, and it was just, we were like along for the ride, and everything, it was like the seas were parting, everything just, slotted into place and happened very quickly. But because I was pregnant, and everything there is very archaic, and anyway, Chris could get his visa sorted, but not mine. And so we decided that he was going to go and move there, and I would be here until my visa came through, and then I'd go and join him in Dubai. And that just never happened. So I basically spent 3/4 of the pregnancy, or 2/3 of the pregnancy, on my own in Sydney, and he was in Dubai, and he was working like crazy hours building, trying to get this new life set up for us over there. And then it got to the point where my visa didn't come through. It was too late. I was having my first baby. I didn't want to fly. I didn't have any connections over there. And then it was like, okay, well, we'll just stay here in Sydney. I'll just stay here in Sydney. You can fly back for the birth, and then we'll all go back together. And so he ended up coming back when I was 38 weeks pregnant, and we hadn't seen each other for like 4 months. And he was just a completely different person. And something I want to talk to a little bit later is Alison Armstrong's work and understanding the knight and the prince and all the different chapters of men. And he was just deep in his prince building phase. And he'd been working and just, he was just a completely different person. And he'd also been staying with a friend and literally sleeping on a friend's couch. And so he was just very hard, very it was very abrasive when he came back, because I was in this, nurturing, I'm about to have my first baby, trying to soften, but very like, I've got to be good. I've got to, hold it together sort of phase. Anyway, he came back. Arlo, our first, was born the night before her due date. And then he left again when she was 2 weeks old. And we had a really rocky start to her life. She was born in the hospital. The birth was really straightforward and, for a hospital birth, very easy, very good. But then when she was a couple of days old, it was developed during birth, but we didn't find it until after. She had a kephal hematoma, which is basically just a big pooling of red blood cells. And what they said to us was, when her head started to show the bump, we think she's internally bleeding, and you didn't give her vitamin K, so she's going to bleed to death. And it was like,
fuck,
so horrendous. It was so, and then anyway, so they whisked her off and they did all these tests and scans and poked and prodded her, and then came back after about 4 hours. So she's 2 days old, and they took her away, and they came back after 4 hours and said, oh, it's just a hematoma, and she's got jaundice, so she just needs to stay under the lights for 48 hours, but she'll be okay. And so we were on this like high from birth, and then this, deep, deep low. And then even though I didn't stay in the hospital when I gave birth, I went home very quickly. We ended up staying there. And anyway, so then we came out, and she was about 5 days old. So we had 10 days together before he left. And the night that he left, I was just like, I'm begging him, don't go, please don't go. You can't leave us. Like, don't leave me. Like, I don't know when I'm going to see you again. And he left. And it was just so brutal. And those first few weeks were just like, it was just so brutal. That's the only word I have for it. And then when I think about, in comparison to then all the other births that I've had, and how gentle and loving and like this warm cocoon, and he was there, and like, it just, for that to be the first one was so harsh. And anyway, so I was in Sydney, he was in Dubai, more visa issues happening. because he was opening a new business. And anyway, at 7 weeks postpartum, Arlo and I flew to Dubai to move there, and I'd never been there before. I didn't know anyone. Last time I saw Chris, he was like, yeah, just this very harsh, driven, focused man. And when we got there, because of all the visa like slowness, we actually had to move in with a friend of his and stay in the friend's spare room. And so it was this single bachelor and Chris and I and the baby in the spare room. And it was just like the biggest culture shock. I can't even explain to you how just the culture shock. And I'd be out breastfeeding in the morning in the early hours, and there'd be girls like coming out of Fergie's room, walking out, carrying their high heels. Like it was just, and I remember just thinking, what happened to my white picket life? How did I get here? Or what happened? And anyway, we stayed there for 6 months with the guy in his spare room. And then
6 months.
Had 6 months. And then we had to get some friends to sign a lease for us so that we could get our own space. And we did, and it was beautiful. And then it was like we fully got into the experience there. But a few months after we moved into this dream apartment, I just had this overwhelming feeling like we have to leave. This is not where we're meant to be. I don't want to bring up our children here. I just missed so much about this part of the world and nature and just feeling grounded. It was very flighty and, cement and sand and high rises and aircon. It just was like, it was a harsh environment. And we watched The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. It's a movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I love that movie.
Oh my God. So the song, the closing song, I just remember like bawling my eyes out and saying to him, we have to move to Bali. And he was like, okay. And then anyway, I went and I researched and I found where I wanted to live, how much it was going to cost, like all the things, and came to him and basically did this like spreadsheet presentation being like, this is it. And he'd been talking about doing this online business. And so I said, if we go now, we don't pay our next, because you pay your rent yearly there, and it's extraordinary the amount of money. So if we don't pay this rent and we go now, we've got a huge buffer. You can get this online business up and running. Like, let's do it. And so we did. And we just basically smoke bombed the city and left very quickly, and landed in Bali almost with our tails between our legs. And just the last, year and a half had been so hard, and we didn't know each other. We had this, now 1-year-old. He'd been in this hard battle mode, I would say. And now I can see that that's what it was, but I didn't understand at the time. And I had been in this trying to soften mode into motherhood, but also I've got this, I'm holding it together, very strong. And we got to Bali, and it was so hard getting to know each other again, being in this very foreign place. Being in Bali 9 years ago is not like being in Bali now. There's a lot of it's very westernized. There's a lot of comforts there now. But when we first moved there, it was very harsh. And so that was really abrasive. And then we softened into Bali. And then we went there not really with a plan, but thinking it might be a year or so that we were there. And we ended up staying for 9 years and having our 3 other daughters there. And my whole experience of motherhood was so shaped by being there and being in foreign places on my own. And I mean, with no old friends, no my parents, no support systems, no comfort. I had to really find my grit and find my fortitude and figure out so many things on my own, which I'm so grateful for that experience, but it really did harden me. And I was so proud of how independent I was. And I was like flying, and I know you can relate to this, Chloe, you're flying all over the world and like, I can do it, and like kids in tow, and like I was so out in the world and so adventurous, and everything was an option, and everything was exciting and fun and super adventurous. But in that, I had to get so hard.
Well, that's like like if we go into the masculine and feminine and into a relationship, like that's more or less what all single women have to do. Like single mothers have to do. Like it's this independent, very masculine quality that you have to hold to be able to hold down the entire fort. Like, and
it's also incredibly glorified, right?
100%.
Totally.
Mama, my gosh, like you're killing it. Go you should be so proud of yourself. Like you are just living this,
but even
life.
Before that point, like how glorified is it? Like if, your man's doing this or that, or something's uncomfortable in your relationship, to just, but you're an independent woman. You could do this on your own. Like, man, I've even had those thoughts where I'm like, I'll do this.
Whatever, I can do this on my own. I don't need you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it is so glorified. And I think especially with all the travel, and like we were doing some really cool things, and, it is so glorified, and I was really good at it and I enjoyed it. But in that, I hardened so much, and it was almost like me and the kids and him, and like we were a family, but it was very separate. And even in the way that we would travel, he would often be ahead of us, doing filming or like running events or doing whatever he was doing, and then we would go and join him. So even the amount of hours that I spent like in the air on my own with the children, and it's the little things like the little comments from strangers or flight attendants or whatever, who were like, yeah, you've got this, mama, and like look at you go, and all of that stuff. And I definitely I think I fed off of that a bit as well.
Ego
it was my
that.
identity.
Yeah, got to feed that ego, man.
Yeah. And so we were based in Bali for 9 years, but we were traveling a lot. And in that time we had 3 more children. Beautiful home births. I don't know if you want to get into that. Maybe that's like a whole other story.
It's like a whole other podcast.
It is.
Probably 2 with 4.
Yeah, definitely. And so, but really amazing, beautiful experiences, and a lot of deconditioning, and just, all of that. I know you guys get that. And then Chris sold his business at the end of 2022, and our youngest was 9 months old. And our whole sort of deal, I guess, was when we realized we were going to stay in Bali. We're working to sell this business. This is the best place for us to be as a family. It's the most supportive, and, I'm taken care of, he's taken care of, kids are taken care of. It was the best place to be. Once we sell, we're going to move to Australia. And we bought this house here a few years before, just as an investment. And that was like my holy grail, that's what I'm working towards. And so we sold, it was all like amazing. And then we moved here, and we got here, and I had gotten everything that I wanted. And it was like I just put Australia on a silver platter, I guess is how I would describe it. And like everything that I want is there. And I manifested all of the things that I wanted, from the nanny, Jade, amazing, angel, to spots at the girls' school that no one ever gets into, and we got spots for them. This dream home, all the things, amazing friends and community. And that's what I've been really craving, because Bali was so transient and international. I never had that extended, support feeling and community feeling. Even though there's a great expat community, I never felt, just wasn't me. It just wasn't my people. And anyway, I found all that here, everything. I was like living my life, loving it. I'd been on this big, just natural weight. I just like released so much weight that I had been holding. And I think in Bali, I was so like in this protective mode still. And then I got here and everything was like light and easy and fun and everything. And then there was a rupture within our marriage. And I still don't really know how to describe what it was, but it was a breach of boundaries in an emotional, spiritual, intellectual way. I don't know if affair is the right word, but that's probably the closest thing that I can say that it was. And so I'm over here like living my dream life, everything I've ever wanted. Chris is not living his dream life. He's having a full identity, not crisis isn't the right word, but just like crumbling of who he is, because this thing that he'd been working towards, selling his business for all of these years, he did it, and then we moved, and then we were here, and it was like almost crickets. Like, now what? Who am I? She's doing good. She's great over there, but like I'm not really happy here, and I don't have all my community that's all over there. And there was just this this sort of space that grew between us that got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I didn't realize, because I was so living my best life and everything I ever wanted, and so focused on the girls and getting them settled and nurturing them. And in that, completely forgot about him and nurturing him and going through this experience together. And then he had this woman who was giving him all of the things that I was not giving him. And he used the word nurturing when he was sort of, after, and we got into it, and he used the word nurturing, like she nurtures me, and in a way that you haven't or aren't. And like to hear that is just like the most
soul crushing.
And the moment of not discovery, I guess is the right word, but just I had this moment where I was like, okay, I can choose right now what I'm going to do with this. And like I knew, it's happening, but then to like really know, I remember thinking, okay, this is either the end or this can be like a whole new beginning. And that's sort of what we did. So it was
really quickly, Lauren, just to clarify for our listeners, there's, and correct me if I say anything wrong here, but there was a situation where he was in an online relationship, but it was not physical, but it was like an emotional.
It was not purely online, but it was not a physical.
Okay.
They'd been in the same physical space, but there was no physical exchange, if that makes sense.
Okay. And then
it continued, yes, on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how did you come to find out about that?
I knew, like as I said, like I just knew
intuitive.
There was just something not right. It was just an intuitive, and we had many, many discussions. And I think he was in a real state of like self-deception and not wanting to, like he genuinely did not see it. It was a business partner, and it was like,
okay.
it was so layered. It was so layered. And so, yeah, I ended up finding a stream of messages that I went searching for. And I've never been in that situation before where I've felt like, I don't know. I've never been in a situation before where I felt like I need to go and investigate this. And even that in and of itself is like, yeah. And I know that it's so, that it happens. And especially with how we operate now and today, and there is so much space for, crossings of boundaries is how I would say it.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it. There's so many names for it. But, and then that moment of like discovery and just like this,
world like caving in.
The world, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Esther Perel has a book called State of Affairs, which is very helpful if anyone's in it.
But even for those who are not, can I put out there, because Esther Perel's work, I mean, me and my husband have gone through our ups and downs, and Esther Perel's work, without like that specific event happening, is still so valid. So I just want to put that out there for anyone who's like, oh no, it doesn't apply to me.
Yeah. And she has another book called Mating in Captivity, and actually that's what I read when it first all sort of unfolded. And that was super helpful, because in that she talks about the difference between love and desire and the thread of the third. I don't know if you are familiar with this like term or
no.
So she talks about the third being basically a third energy that is, in your relationship, and it can be something really innocent that is very powerful and very good to play with, or it can be, a whole other family on the side sort of thing. And
there's a scale.
There's a scale. So I actually really appreciate this third energy now, and especially what we've then sort of gone through on, which we'll get to. But it can be little things like, I don't know, having a little flirtatious smile at your barista or personal trainer or the cute builder or whatever it might be, that gives you this like life-giving burst of energy, which maybe when you're in long-term relationship, you don't get that necessarily from your partner, but you can channel it back into them. So you might get a little like, dose of, I don't know, feeling good from, the cute barista. And then that you can channel that into your partner. So that's just been like a fun little thing to notice and a dynamic to work with as well. But anyway, so then we had, this very uncomfortable conversation, and with lots of tears and lots of just like a complete crumbling. And like, and I'm sure everyone feels this, but like, how could you do this to me? Like, and then actually it's realizing that, and I know this is not everyone's experience, this was just my experience, but it was a co-creation between all of us. And, I was so fixated on moving and getting the girls sorted and setting up here, and had no attention on him. And then he's feeling this lack, and then this person comes along and she's not getting that in her marriage. And then, it just all like the four of us basically co-created this whole situation. And to take ownership in that as well, because I was able to see, like, I was not nurturing. I was not giving him what he wanted or needed, or, it was just this thing that happened. And I'm so glad that it happened the way that it did, because it could have been, on the scale, it could have been in a lot of different
Whole
places.
family on the side.
And it wasn't, and it was, you know, it was obviously very hard, and but in so many ways I was asleep, and I was asleep, and it violently shook me awake and slapped me across the face, and was like, from that moment, everything changed for me, like everything. And the way that I wanted my marriage to be, the way that I wanted to mother, the sort of friend that I wanted to be, the way I just interact with the world, the softening and the releasing of the hard shell that I'd built around myself and this protective and this like independent woman and, you know, all of this stuff. And it was just such a crumbling. And we had the opportunity to decide and repair, like, you know, come back together and decide to do it together and, you know, begin again and all of that stuff.
Can I interrupt you there, Lauren? Because, I mean, I think it's so admirable, especially in today's day and age where it's so easy for us to just walk away from that situation, and be encouraged to generally by our friends and our family, like, oh, they didn't treat you right. Well, there's plenty of fish out in the sea, and ABC, like, you'd leave and you'd be encouraged to go. What made you decide to not take that path?
That's such a good question. I don't know. It was just, it was a believing that we could get through it, and that it was just this opportunity for a complete, you know, shaking. Redo. And it was like an earthquake, and it was exactly a redo. And it was like, okay, we can rebuild now. Yeah. And like, we have been together for 20 years this year. So, and I'm not putting this on anyone else, but like, if that's the thing that was going to happen, you know, to shake us into this new version of ourselves, I'm really, as I said, I'm really happy that it was the way that it was. Yeah. And I think just, I don't know what made me decide, like, no, this is the beginning, not the end.
I love that, because there's, I mean, so much that we've looked into, and like looking at society as a whole and how, you know, 50% of marriages end in divorce. I think it could be higher now. I'm not 100% sure. But people don't even go into marriage anymore because of those statistics, and they've, you know, usually children that have come from broken families, etc. To, you know, like, I've always considered the facts of like children being brought up in a safe environment, and like how that home, like having a mum and dad together is so beneficial in that sense. And also like in terms of, it's quite now it's quite rebellious to stay with your partner, because you're sticking it to like the GPT, whatever it is, like we're not two house like we're like, you know, we're not going to be forking out for two properties, and, you know, all of these things that creates more income for the people you don't want to give it to.
There's also a lot here, right? Because most people today are like, let's take yourself, like having, you know, like really bolster this self-awareness and this like, you know, look how good I am and I'm healing and I'm doing all this shit. But if you're put in this situation, how many women are willing to be like, where was my responsibility in this? Like, where did I go wrong? Because it's a two-person thing, a marriage. Like, you can't just be like, my husband's not doing this, my husband's not doing this, I didn't do this. Or he can't be like, well, she just wasn't doing this ever. And so I feel like in that beautiful, you know, marriage is a really messy, unified construct. And when you start pointing the finger at just one person and never taking the opportunity to look in the mirror and be like, well, where am I at? Like, what kind of person have I molded into over 20 years? Like, who have I become? Is this, like, you know, where's the room to kind of grow and evolve here? Or do we just be like, fuck it, this got hard. This is no longer kind of like we're not really doing it for each other. Or maybe like you just didn't get used to me wearing a top knot 24/7 and, you know, my postpartum knickers, my birthday was 7 years ago and I'm still there. Like you didn't get used to that. Like, so I think there's a lot to the why would you stay. But yeah, anyway, I don't want to waste
and I think
the time on my opinion. I want to hear you.
Yeah, we have a beautiful family and we are so good together. And I know that me being by his side and supporting him in all that he does, and him being by my side and supporting me in what I do, and like we really are an amazing team. And so just remembering that and it was like, this thing happened that caused a big break, but I've got grit and I'm willing to do the hard things, and he is too. And marriage is messy and layered, and I watched my parents separated when I was 11, and I watched both of them actually then find their people and get remarried, and they're still with their, husbands and wives now, and be so much happier in that second marriage. So I'm not afraid of divorce, or I'm not afraid of starting over, or, but for some reason I just decided that was not the right thing for us. And also for him as well. It's like, it wasn't just me. It was this, there was many, no, there was many, conversations and discussions and everything. And over 20 years, there is so much like growing and this happens. And something that came up for us was sex. And sort of after having Noah, their youngest, we were pretty much in a sexless marriage. Like we did have sex, not very often at all. And it was not something that I really was into, that I did it to keep him happy, to be completely honest. And his needs were much more than mine, but even that was very low. And this sort of earthquake, I don't know what it did, but it awoke something inside of both of us, me particularly, where I found this sexual side of myself that I had just like squashed down in the child rearing, breastfeeding, birthing, pregnancy portal that I'd been in for 10 years straight, going from back to back to back to back. And sex was just not something that I was interested in.
Which I think a lot of women and a lot of mothers can relate to, because we're often told it's just not the time. Yeah. It's just not a time for sex. It's a time for looking after, you've got to, it's just not a thing. But it is a thing.
It is 100% a thing. And I just, as I said, I just didn't think I was a very sexual person. It was just not something I was interested in. And it has been so life-changing, and the flow-on effect, like I've been joking on Instagram recently about being well-fed and well-fucked. Sorry, my headphones
in. Coming at you.
Yes. And it's so like playful and true. Like we need like feed yourselves and,
fuck yourself as well.
Fuck yourselves, yeah. If that's
and
how
each
you
other.
need to do it. Yeah. Yes, each other. And that's the thing.
Don't hold back, babe, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
We did just have Kim on.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, that's good. So like fun, basically the last year has just been this like sex marathon of like getting to know each other in that way, and myself. And as I said, I was like, the good mom, and I was very like put together and all of this. And it's like you can still be a really amazing mom and like really enjoy fucking your husband. And so it's just, and then that flows into everything else as well, because I don't know. We just need more people who are coming from that space.
Because I remember when we spoke about this, and I can't remember if it was like behind closed doors when you told me what was going on, and it really shocked me. And I remember being like genuinely affected by it, because I was like, at that time I was wearing my hair in a top knot every day. I was like so out of myself and so into motherhood, and I was like, fuck, I can totally relate to so much of what you're saying, and like not prioritizing like anything to do with my relationship. That's just like something that's happening in the background, and it's not happening very well, and it's just surviving. And I was like, that is really like, it was such an impact, and it wasn't even happening to me. I was like, holy fuck, like, that could happen. Like that I could feel that. Like I could really feel that as being something real for me. And so I was like, so I'm wondering now, like, was it just something like, okay, you found out this massive, huge thing, world came crashing in, and then it was just like a really natural, like, urge to have all this sex? Or was it kind of like, okay, I've got to figure some stuff out, like I've got to discover, like, okay, what turns you on, like what's the path there for you anyway?
There was quite a few things. So I think one was just like there's nothing like the threat of somebody else that makes you like step up and be like, I'm going to sort myself out, you know. And it wasn't even a conscious thing. It was this subconscious thing that happened, and I felt like I had been in this cocoon, and all of a sudden I was like, you know, coming out. And we chatted about, like, you know, the husband T-shirts and postpartum undies, and swapping that out for like the sexy little cotton, you know, sleepwear sets, and like just what that does for you on its own. And I've been deep on this masculine feminine journey, but also this spatial alchemy journey, which is using the things in your, like, physical things in your space to reprogram your subconscious into like, who are you becoming, and who do you want to be? And so having like the sexy sleepwear, you can't help but be this like turned on little minx, you know, and instead of hiding in the sloppy stuff. And like there's a time and a place for the sloppy stuff, and I was in that for so long. But just to feel this like, playfulness is so fun and refreshing. And so it did happen quite organically, and it was not very conscious, but there was a lot happening like underneath that, just sort of led me forward. I think I just wanted to also bring up quickly about scheduling in sex. So one of my very best girlfriends, who I won't name, but because I haven't asked for her permission, she's the first person I told about this. And I sat her down and I just told her everything, and we had these really great discussions. And then we sort of, again, because I was not very sexual, we'd never really talked about sex, like we had, but not super, super deep. And she just is like the epitome of amazing wife, nurturer, feminine, like all the qualities that I wanted to be as a wife, she holds. And I asked her, like, how do you do sex? Like, what does that look like? And not how
mother of
how
four.
do
you do it? Mother of four girls. like, how do you do sex?
No, like, how does it look in your week? Like, I have to schedule everything. Like, what does that look like? And she said, we do 3 nights a week. There's a theme every night, which I won't get into, but anyway. So
Sounds fun.
It is fun. We did that, and we scheduled our 3 nights because I felt like that was a good, amount. And what I found was that knowing that it was a sex night, I would then create space for it in the day. So I might, eat the foods that make me feel really fresh and bouncy and not heavy, and shave my legs or wash my hair, or, any of the things that I used to use as an excuse before to be like, I'm not really into it, or I'm not feeling it, or, I haven't shaved my legs, or whatever it is. It's like you just create that space for then it to happen. And then on the non-sex nights, it was just happening anyway. But not just at nighttime, during the day, in the morning, like, all the time.
Yeah.
And so by creating that structure, which I always thought, it should be spontaneous and it's meant to be like it, but in this chapter, when you have 4 children, like there's not a whole lot of space for spontaneity. So yeah, that's been fun to explore.
Something I want to just quickly touch on before it gets lost. Sorry, babe. Is like if you take away all the like sexy lingerie and the scheduling and just like, okay, I need to revamp myself. I'd love to just get into quickly before we spend another 4 hours talking about this. Like the more of the like energetic, dynamic, like understanding your man and him understanding you, and kind of like, because I feel like we can take off our sloppy joes, we can get like do our hair, we can shave our legs, but I feel like that has a expiry date as well. But okay, well then if we're clashing still and we're still not understanding like the needs of each other, or do you feel like in your experience the more sex you were having, that like you kind of just in this simmering, like everything kind of just started flowing properly? Because I feel like there's more to it.
Yeah, I think both, like yes and. So the me softening and really learning and discovering my feminine side, and has allowed him to really shine in his masculine side. And something that my girlfriend, who I was just talking about, and I have been talking about recently, is how much men, just general men, have been squashed. And this whole like women and men are equal and independent woman, and I don't need him, he, all of that stuff has it's just squashed the men. And you can see that in little interactions, like not even in marriage, but I travel a lot on my own with the girls. How many men come and offer to help me, to pick up a bag or that? And I'll tell a little story in a minute about that. But what I found was that by allowing him to take the lead and initiate him into his like true masculine king presence, it allowed me to soften more, because I was feeling protected and provided for, and because he was given that, not permission isn't the right word, but I was like, I was not trying to butt with him. The opportunity, and be like, well, I want this outcome, so I'm going to do it myself. And like allowing him to really do that, it just feeds the cycle. So I feel provided and protected for. He feels like he's the leader and the he's got this woman beside him, who just is, devoting herself to him and honoring him and loving him and supporting him and nurturing him. And then it feeds the cycle. So
and
it
creates space for that, doesn't it? So like, because before, like you said, being in that independent, I'm, holding the fort with the girls, I'm doing like organizing the school, I'm traveling with them by myself, which I like it. Some people out there, it's like, yeah, okay, you're just traveling with your kids. But when you're traveling with your kids, with 4 kids by yourself, that's like, you've got to organize activities and food and clothes for 4 different, and like, I mean, we go back and forth from Melbourne quite a bit, and I'm like, that's a shit ton of clothes. And then like carriers and there's
all the things.
It's a logistical nightmare. We do it. Chloe's just done it, pregnant, but it's a logistical nightmare. And you don't have space to be like, okay, and how am I going to nurture my husband today? It's like, no, mate, you're actually an adult. You can look after yourself. I've got like 7,000 things to do.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? I just had the vision of like, okay, so on my to-do list, it's like, okay, each thing that girl needs and blowjob. I can't. Like, fuck that. That's the first thing going off the list.
Off the list,
yeah.
And like, it's like, mate, you got a hand, go for it. But at the same time, if and I look at this as a big society thing. I love Louise Perry's work and Mary Harrington, who I drop all the time because I'm hoping one day they hear this and they're like, I want to be on that podcast.
Yeah. Just keep saying it.
Yeah, over and over. But they're like, they look really into that, like social cultural, like those shifts that happened that created this harsh feminine, you know, or feminism basically, which has really encouraged us to step up, lean in, be boss woman, make sure you take no shit. And like, and you know, there's a lot of positives in that as well. But what got left at the wayside is that it's like in a relationship dynamic, yeah, we can as women do absolutely everything, but it comes at a cost. And if we take on all of these really masculine roles as well, which we can do, but we do, like, you don't have room and space to hold your kids and your relationship and a business and providing, and you know, it's a lot. It's anyone that's tried to do that, it's a lot. So it's like creating, like, knowing all this, it doesn't mean that we have to go back to tradwifery, but I made up a word. Everyone, I made up.
No, I think it's a good word. Yeah.
Thank you.
We get you.
Thank you. But we can, like, at least have this knowledge where it's like, okay, what are the really important things in life? My kids and my relationship should be, but like,
I would say like
right
your relationship is the most important, right?
Yeah, well, because like, and that's feeding into the kids, isn't it? Like the whole family dynamic. Like if you want to look after your kids, your relationship should be on point. Like they're not comfortable, safe, feeling held or felt if you and your spouse
and
are
to be
at
in
each
an
other.
environment of love. And I think the thing that I didn't see and I'm only seeing now is that actually when you have a man being a man and a woman being a woman, and like there's so much more space. If I can hand that off to him, and I don't need to be provider and protector, even though there are many times throughout my days when I do need to be because I'm up with the kids, if I can hand that to him, like there is so much more space, there is so much more grace, there is so much more patience and playfulness. I keep saying that word, but it's something that I've only really just discovered. And
it's what everyone should aspire to too. Playfulness. Like if you can increase that love and joy and childish behavior, that's just benefiting everyone.
It is. And the life energy that you get from that, I didn't even know it was possible. And it's taken me all these years to get here, and I'm like, I wish I could just, you know, and I know it's the journey, but like there was so many years of like just like hard and just this like really harsh environment that I was creating and receiving from the masculine. So as I've sort of said before, it's not even just in your relationships, but receiving from men. And every time we do that, we encourage them to do it a little bit more, which like we all need to play our part in society. And I'll just tell a quick little story about my most recent flight to Bali was in January. I was on my own with the girls. We landed and we had to walk down the stairs off the plane, across the tarmac onto a bus, and then get the bus to the terminal in Denpasar. And so we landed and I sort of forgot. I thought we were going right up. But anyway, and I was like, I had my like wheelie suitcase and my bag and Noah in the carrier and Rumi's hand to hold and the bigger girls. And like, I was like, okay, I can do this. I'll just like, you know, Arlo can hold Rumi's hand and I'm going to hold the bag and Sunny can hold this and like, I can do it. And then I was like, what are you doing? Like, stop making it hard for yourself. And I quickly glanced around and there was this like tall, dark, handsome man a few seats in front of me on his own. And I went up to him and I said, excuse me, I'm traveling on my own with the kids. Would you mind just helping me down the stairs with my bag? And he's like, oh my God, of course. I'm a dad. Let me help you. And it was just this really pure, innocent interaction where he wanted to help and I was open to receiving. And then he helped us onto the bus. He sat with us. We had this beautiful conversation. His kids are grown. We like shared some stories. We walked through the terminal. Anyway, I'm at the baggage carousel, and then he came up and said, let me help you with your bags. And he got waited with me, got the bags, put them onto the trolley. And like, that was the end of our interaction. But it was so amazing to receive. And then when you're open to that, how those little things just happen. So it's doing it with your husband, but.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it says a lot for being vulnerable too, because like it actually takes quite a bit of balls to ask for help when you need it. Yeah.
Actually, so when you shared that story, then I just remembered that I denied help twice on my trip over here, being 7 months pregnant or more
and
with
you've got
4 kids.
I know.
And I was like, well, it doesn't matter. I've got a driver. I've got someone that's meeting me in the baggage. Like, I'm fine. But like, getting off the plane is also sometimes like exactly then. It's like
hard.
Everyone has their shit. There's a lot to carry. There's shoes everywhere. And like a guy was like, do you need help? And I was like, no, I'm all good. They're good. They can get. And I was like, yes.
Next time, next time say yes.
But also that would have like boosted their testosterone. And
totally.
The world needs testosterone right now. Like 100%. Men don't have any. So like I feel like it doesn't have to be a sexual thing or like a relationship thing. Like you can just be topping everybody. We can all just be topping each other up. Yeah. And so it's like, it's giving, it's topping them up, and then that flows, and then someone else will see it. And like it all, like let's get the men to rise by being open and vulnerable to receiving.
It's so funny because Chloe and I were literally having this conversation yesterday. We spoke with Kim Anami just recently. And
oh my God, amazing.
Yeah, she's a fucking powerhouse, hey. But like just with her courses, because me and my husband have gone through our like lowest low quite a few years ago, and once we started coming out of that, we were like, okay, like we've got things to work on, and we did really actively, mainly our relationship, definitely our sex life. That's when we were introduced to Tantra and Taoism and all of the things, and we really put that into play. And I was saying to Chloe, like when we really prioritized that, everything in life flows so much better. Like it was over the course of my pregnancy, birth and postpartum with our third. And so like, I was like, I noticed guys looking at me more, and I'd be like, and like
emanating.
Exactly. And like, and I was just, I couldn't keep my hands off my husband, and we were, we ended up getting married 4 months postpartum with Rue, and it was just like, it was this really beautiful, juicy time. And I was like, it wasn't just our relationship or even just the family environment, but going out, like I would have guys ask to help, like, and I would still deny because I'm terrible receiver, and I came to like that discovery only just recently, but but I'd get the offers, right? I mean, before that, I was like, I remember being pregnant with Rue. I had like Humphrey was only 1.5 or something. I had him on my hip. I was going into the hospital to go to one of the appointments. I had my nearly 3-year-old like holding my hand, and I tripped. I couldn't see past my belly, and I tripped on the curb, and I like made a mess of it. Humphrey went flying, smacked his head on the concrete. My leg was bleeding like all the way down. There was 5 guys doing nothing in different areas around me. Not one person had come up to me and offered help, and I was like, the fuck is, like, this is the one time I'd be like, hey, great, can you help me? Because like we're all bleeding now, and I'm pregnant. I
can't see.
And it was like, wow, like that's now, not now, but then like after, when we were actually working on these things, I'd just be carrying groceries, and I wouldn't even have any kids with me, and I'd get an offer from someone to carry them to the car, and you just like it really emanates like all around you. So it's something to definitely prioritize, and I've realized like over the last year and maybe 2 years that we've not been prioritizing our relationship like we were, and we're both quite aware of it too. It's like phases, but No, it's I'm like, the more conversations we have like this, I'm like, oh, I miss that feeling. I miss that like really juicy, fun and just easeful kind of atmosphere within the relationship.
I mean, there's so much to like get rid of for us as women too. Like we have so much mother guilt. It's like, okay, well, how can I don't feel comfortable like getting a nanny, or I don't feel comfortable getting a cleaner, or I don't feel like we're just so like.
Can I just interrupt you with that, Chloe? Because
she needs to be interrupted.
Because she needs to be interrupted. Because that story, that is, and like I'll just talk about Australia because I've lived in Dubai. I didn't live in Australia as a mother until 9 years into my motherhood journey. So my whole experience of motherhood was in Dubai and Bali, which are places where having help is not only common but expected. If you don't have a housekeeper / nanny / driver / gardener / pool guy, like what chef, whatever, like you're the odd one out. And so even though I wanted and was a very like hands-on mum, and I was very lean in terms of like what support I had, I still had it. And then I came here, and it's like the whole mother story of being a martyr and, you know, this one woman being responsible for all of the children and the husband and the house and the gardens and the like all of the things.
And contribute financially.
Yes, financially, absolutely. And then to like be expected to present yourself and then give your husband a blowjob and like all of like, it's just impossible. It is so impossible. And so I very quickly fell into that. Like, oh, well, I'm here now. I don't need a cleaner. I don't need a nanny, whatever, even though financially, you know, we had more than enough to be able to have whatever support that I wanted. I had this societal story put on me that that's just not what you do here. And I did then bring in help with having a nanny, and she only came a couple of times a week. But what that gave us was the space in our relationship to work through this huge rupture and really get to know each other again, and, you know, all of that. And just a couple of hours a week, it just it helped so much. So yeah, I think asking for help, whether it's paid or whether it's the guy at the fruit shop carrying out the box for you, is like, yeah, being open to receive is a big one.
I think that's something that I've been like
heckling me about for like over a year.
Yeah.
I have too. I've been telling you too.
Everyone tell Chloe.
Here's a nanny bitch.
But like, because
this bitch is not going to receive, so I have to be beaten,
force it down your throat. I could have gone really dirty with that. Anyway, so
speaking of,
when you do, like, I mean, because we've never had a nanny before. The only time we've ever justified getting a babysitter is for me to work. So when me and Toka work together, and, you know, we've interviewed a nanny because this time around I'm like, nah, like I need to get help.
Like kids, we're getting one.
Yeah, but like it had to like get to a point of my body screaming at me. Like I had to get to such a diseased state to be like, okay, no, actually I need help. Like I can't go through all of that illness again. So we interviewed a nanny, and I was speaking to her, and, you know, my thoughts of a nanny was just that she would hang out with the kids all the time, but is a beautiful woman, and she is like, no, I really love to cook, and I'm happy to clean as well. So it's like literally just I'm the extra hands.
Yeah, and she's an extra you.
Yeah, and I stopped for a second, and I was just like I'm never with my children. I'm always with my children, but I never get to give them attention, because when we're in the house, I am cooking, I am cleaning, I am prepping, and if I can get a couple of emails out, like, awesome. But I'm never actually with my children. And I was like, imagine like a bit later down the track, because with a newborn, I'm not going to be with my children either. But like later down the track, when I'm feeling good and like I can take my kids down to the beach, I can just be with them down the beach, have a nanny who can like maybe twice a week just take care of dinner. So it's not like my options are we don't go to the beach and I cook, so everyone's got a good meal for dinner, or we go down and then I've got to get back, rush. I'm grumpy at everyone because I've got to rush this meal around and I've got kids screaming at me because they're super hungry. This has like opened a door just for 2 nights a week that I could potentially come home.
Have sex.
Well, probably because we're not like a grumpy bitch.
Dinner. We don't care about dinner, babe. Why are you cooking dinner
But
still?
even that,
well fed,
well, I'll be well fed and then can be well fucked.
Yes.
But like, and that's the thing, like even just that in and of itself, like I think so many women, don't even consider the fact that if you're doing absolutely everything, you're still not with your kids. You could be homeschooling, but you're thinking about the curriculum. You're thinking about everything that they need to do. You're trying to keep them entertained or like engaged in whatever activity it is. And then you've still got to maintain, and most women are still trying to bring in some form of income. So you're doing that as well. And it's just like, well, where's the space to
be playful,
or to have sex, but to even like not be grumpy, like of all the things, it just makes me so bloody grumpy at my kids because then they ask me for something. I'm like, no, I've got to do everything else first. So it is such a bizarre story that we've gone on and like I just don't know why.
It's such a badge of honor. It's such what I have seen, because this has been the weirdest like reverse cultural shock coming back to the country that I was born in but never experienced being a mother in. And it's like this badge of honor. Like, oh, she's superwoman. She's super mum. She's whatever.
Oh, and I feed off that, man. Like, anytime someone says that to me, I'm just like, yeah.
Yeah, tell me. Give it to me. Yeah. Whereas, like, the flip side of that is, what if it was like, you know, you have a cleaner come once a week, once a fortnight, whatever. You have a couple of hours a week where you can potentially have someone take care of meals or be with your kids so you can go on a date with your husband or whatever it is, you can spend quality time with them. That was one of the things that I did when we had Jade was I alternated and I took the 2 eldest girls each week, one of them out for a 1-hour walk and breakfast date. And that was revolutionary for our relationship because they would talk the entire time. It's like, and they knew that it was coming. So they would just be so, you know, happy knowing that time was coming. So, yeah, and then you've got more space. You've got more, space to be playful. And, it's being open to receiving.
I think it's a big one for women. I'm dying to know, though, like, back to the you and Chris thing.
Yeah.
Has it been, like, smooth sailing? Like, have you guys...
Like, bless your honesty and cotton socks, Lauren.
Yeah,
I have to give to people who feel like this is so far away from being their reality a little bit of a like, see, she's still fucked.
Yeah, I'm
not in a good way.
Still figuring it out.
Multiple levels,
really well fucked, and also no, it's been like there was the immediate, and Esther Perel talks about like I can't remember the stages, but basically there's like these stages after a rupture of the repair. And so there's like the immediate, and then there's the sort of middle ground, and then there's the longer term, like long-term visioning. And we've been like, we got through all of that, and then it was amazing, and then it was really shit, and then it was really amazing, and then it was really shit. And then, you know, and Chris does travel a lot. And so there's times where he's away for a month at a time, and then he'll come back. And going back to the whole masculine feminine thing, because he's been away, I've had to step up into provider and protector. And then he gets home, and this is something Alison Armstrong talks about. He gets home and I'm like, I've got this, you know, even though all of this stuff that we've been talking about, you can't help but when you're on your own, step into that role. Mm-hmm. And then he comes home and he's been out, I call it like out at battle. So he's been like out, you know, battling, working out in the world. he comes home to the cave and I'm the provider and protector, but he's also provider and protector. And we sort of like butt for a bit while we try and figure it out. And then I will like drop back and he will, step up. But there is definitely that like,
reintegration.
Reintegration of like the family unit as a whole, and having the actual masculine back, not me trying to be the masculine. But I mean, only recently, I think it was January, was a very heavy month for a lot of people. Like I know everyone was really feeling it, and I was really feeling it. And even after what happened, like all of that was so good. But then we got to this point this year and it was like, are we going to like, is this really what we're going to do? Are we staying together? Are we like, who are you? I don't know. We'd been through this huge change again. And it felt like the distance was so much greater than it's ever been, but there was no like event that happened or anything. It just, I don't know, we just sort of grew, even when we were having sex and doing all these things still. And then whatever it was, the heaviness lifted. We're in a really great place now, but yeah, there's definitely ebbs and flows, and I know when I am taking care of me on like a fundamental level, and then I'm able to show up, for him and for our relationship, and then it all just feeds each other. So I was not eating well, I was not exercising, I was just like not sleeping properly. I was feeling really like cortisol-y and just like harsh. And then alleviating all of that and coming back to what I know makes me feel good, which is so simple. Everything lifted. So yeah,
I think that's a really good point to make, is that there are so many big ebbs and flows, right? In marriage, in relationship, in motherhood, in all of it. And I think this is such important work to do, is because we never see, I mean, I know I never see, and I'm the same. My parents got divorced the same age as I was. You and I were the same age. And so you don't really, like, for a lot of us, the millennials, we haven't seen this unfolding before. Like, we are unfolding and learning. And I think we all have this vision that it's supposed to look so lineal and so like, almost just mundane in a way, and there's not supposed to be ruptures, and there's not supposed to be big mountains to get over, and you kind of just meant to sit and cruise. But I don't think that's the case, and that's not truth, and that's not real. And I think it's this type of work and understanding our partners and understanding where we are and what we're contributing and what we're not contributing is so important, because otherwise it's just basic. It's like, okay, well, we're separating. It's just too hard, or like, we don't get it. We've just grown apart, or we just not worth it anymore. We just want our kids to see happy parents, or like all that shit that people say, and then almost encourage you. Yeah, the kids just need a happy mum and dad. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you just go go your own way, and all of those things is so common. But this type of thing is not common. Getting through it and becoming, actually looking at yourself in the mirror, resilient. And also
and choosing each other after all of that, and being willing and open to choose each other every single time, and know that, I guess reassessing. So that's something that we've had to do. It's like, okay, we know what it looks like when our relationship is pumping, and that's but pre-kids and during kids, and right now it's not. And we're both having like this time.
It feels sticky.
Yeah, but at the same time, we kind of know, okay, it's going to be tough and it's going to be hard, and we're not on the same page, and maybe we'll be snappy at each other. This needs work. Our relationship actually needs our devotion and some work. And so let's create space for that as soon as we can. And just being willing to keep choosing to work at it. Yeah, because I think it is so easy to turn around and just be like, oh, well, you're just not my soulmate.
Yeah.
But also it's not, I think another thing to highlight is it's not a couple's together thing to sort out. It's like when you say we've got work to do, let's sort this out. It's like you probably have your own shit to work out, and it's probably not something that you can sit down together with and be like, okay, so blah, 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 blah. It's kind of actually just like looking in the mirror and being like, or obviously the discussion of like what do you need, or like figuring out what's lacking or what you're not doing is obviously important. But yeah, I feel like the mainstream is like, go to a couples therapist and like, all that, which maybe could be helpful. I don't know.
We haven't done that yet.
Yeah. But it always seems like it's a separate, like two people and their things coming together. And
totally. Yeah. And as I said, like taking care of yourself just on the foundations.
Yeah.
Because then you will just show up better and you will have more, patience and whatever it is that you need to get through that. But I think also, Keshia, it's like accepting and knowing like, okay, this is a bit shit right now, but we're both aware of it. We're working on it. We're like, I'm doing what I need to do. You're doing what you need to do. And we've got this, like we've got the grit to get through this. Because I think like what I saw with my mum, I'll use her as an example. So she was with my dad talking about Alison Armstrong's work. She then went, so he was in like mid-Prince. Then her partner after my dad, he was a knight. So he was super young and he was like fun and, in knight stage. And then she went from him to then my stepdad and he was already king. So her and I have had many discussions because she hasn't been with a man who's gone through all of these stages and supported him through, this sort of becoming of king. So from the outside, it probably looks like, well, it looks hard or it looks, messy or it should be more linear. But actually it's not. It moves a lot. And, they're going through their stages, but we're also going through our own stages to get to our queen-ness. And, it's earned. So,
well, I feel like
that you said earned then. Because it is. It's not something that you just get.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for coming on. This has been, it's been awesome, but I like personally know people who have been through a very, very similar situation to you. So I know that there's going to be quite a few people who will gain from this and really appreciate you sharing. If people want to find you, maybe ask questions, let us know what Alison Armstrong's book is. Where can they do that?
Probably just Instagram, which is just Lauren Dufey. I don't know. I'm nowhere else. I'm just there. And I was there for a long time. So I'm back there now.
And don't be disappointed if you go to Lauren's Instagram and you just don't see anything.
There's nothing. I'll come back.
There's nothing there, but she will post again.
I will come back. I love it. I do that.
I relate to that.
Okay.
Like a cleansing portal. It's like, okay, this whole life, delete. I'm starting again.
I'm starting fresh. And that's the thing, it's like I don't mind a fresh start. Like I quite like a fresh start and being able to just
wipe the
clean
slate.
slate.
Wipe clean. Yeah. This was so fun.
Thanks for sharing as well, because I know it's a lot and it can sometimes be hard sharing those more vulnerable stories. But you're a wise woman and we are looking forward to maybe chatting again. And
definitely.
Yeah. There's so much in there. We could have unpacked a lot and went a lot of different ways.
That was like a broad overview.
I would love to chat more about what you learn about through Alison and just like all of the people that you've been, invested in learning from. I think they're all incredible women. So
thank you.
We've got a lot to learn.
Yes.
All right. See you, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Road to Wisdom podcast. To join the journey, you can follow us on Instagram at theroadtowisdom.podcast and at www.theroadtowisdompodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. We look forward to seeing you next week with more juicy content.